Well, not the best of positions to get on the 9-ball. I probably needed a little bit of side spin. But how much? Let me show you something that'll help you learn. What's going on, everybody? Lil Chris here, and what in the world am I doing? You know, I've been saying for the longest time now about how I've been wanting to try to get back into making some content. Well, this video here is me trying to stick to that commitment. And what I have for you today is I want to show you a little trick that I learned from Tony Robles a few years ago that I believe will allow you to see and learn how much side spin you're actually applying to the cue ball using the tip of your cue as a visual guide. So let's get started. So when I'm talking about applying side spin on the cue ball, I am referring to striking the cue ball anywhere along the horizontal axis, where anywhere to the left of center applies left spin on the cue ball, causing the cue ball to spin in a clockwise motion as it travels across the table. Whereas anywhere to the right of center of the cue ball applies right spin, causing the cue ball to spin in a counterclockwise motion as it travels across the table. Now, what I know most players struggle with is knowing how much side spin they need on a particular shot. Well, I can't really help you with that because every shot's going to be different. What I can help you with is knowing how much side spin you're going to apply on a particular shot, and the tip of your cue is going to help you see that. So notice the tip of my cue at the cue ball. You should be able to see the center of my tip, the left edge of my tip, and the right edge of my tip. Now, if I were to take the center of my tip and just move it to where the left edge of my tip is, well, now I'm applying a half tip of left spin on the cue ball. And then from here, if I were to do it again, move the center of my tip to where the left edge is, I'm now applying a full tip of left spin on the cue ball. Now, if I'm at center cue ball and I just want to apply a full tip of left spin, well, then I can observe where the right edge of my tip is and then just move that to where the left edge of my tip is. And then just like the opposite, if I were to take the center of my tip and move it to where the right edge of the tip is, now I'm applying a half tip of right spin. And then if I do it again, now I'm applying a full tip of right spin. And then the same shortcut applies. If I want to apply a full tip of right spin, I would just take the left edge of my tip and then move it to where the right edge of my tip is. And it's as simple as that. We're now applying side spin on the cue ball a half tip at a time. But not all half tips of spin are going to be the same because tip sizes are different. So let me show you the effect half tips of spins can have on the cue ball using two different tip sizes. So the two shaft sizes that I'm going to be using are 12.5 that I have right here, and that's primarily what I shoot with today. And then on another cue, I have an old 12.9 millimeter shaft that I used to shoot with. And what I'm going to be doing is shooting this cue ball straight into the rail with half tips of spin. And then each subsequent shot after that, I'll be adding more half tips of spin so we can see how much it affects the cue ball coming off that rail. So for this first shot, let's use one half tip of right spin. So I'm starting with center cue ball, and then I'm going to move the center of my tip to where I can see that the right edge of my tip is. And you can see that with a 12.5 millimeter shaft, that a half tip of right spin causes the cue ball to spin off to the right by half a diamond. So that should mean that if I were to apply two half tips of right spin or one full tip of right spin, then I would expect the cue ball to spin off to the right by one diamond. So there's one half tip of spin and then another. And that's pretty accurate. So by that method, that should mean that if I were to apply two tips of right spin, I should end up over here by this side pocket. And this time, for full tip increments of spins, I'm going to take the left edge of my tip and move it to where I can see that the right edge is for one, and then do it again for two. And that's pretty accurate. So that means if we were to go to the left using the same types of spin, we would expect that one full tip of left spin should bring me over here to the left by one diamond. So now I'm taking the right edge of my tip and moving it to where I can see the left edge of my tip is. And that's pretty accurate. And then now 2 tips of left spin to come to the corner pocket. 1, 2. And there you have it. With a 12.5 millimeter shaft, it is fairly accurate to say that each half tip of spin affects the cue ball by half a diamond. But now, let's go try with the 12.9. And now using the 12.9 millimeter shaft, let's apply a half tip of right spin to the cue ball. And because the tip size is a little bit bigger, we should expect to see that the cue ball is going to spin off to the right a little bit more than half a diamond from the 12.5. And that looks to be about 3/4 of a diamond. So if I were to apply 1 full tip of right spin, then I should expect to see that the cue ball is going to spin off to the right by a diamond and a half. And that's pretty accurate. So now if I were to go to the left, a half tip of left spin should take me about 3/4 to the left. Pretty close. And then 1 full tip of left spin should take me over a diamond and a half. And there you have it. So you can see hopefully that I think the best thing this allows you to do is learn your cue and how much spin you can actually apply to the cue ball. Because if I had an 11.8, for example, we would then know that each half tip of spin would be less than the 12.5. So no matter what, using the tip of your cue as a visual guide, moving at half tip increments, you'll know how much side spin you're applying to the cue ball. So now let's apply these side spins to certain shots. And now we're back to the original shot where I was trying to get position on the 9 ball. And we saw that when I shot this ball in with a center cue ball, my cue ball came past the side pocket by 1 diamond. Now with what we learned with my 12.5 millimeter shaft, let's try applying 1 full tip of left spin and see if I can get the cue ball to go 1 diamond further. Now, that's actually not bad. It's a little bit better. Let's try this one more time. Except this time, let's apply 2 full tips of left spin and see if we can get 1 more diamond closer. And that's actually much better. So we can see about how using the tip of our cue as a visual guide at applying side spin, we can eventually learn for each individual shot how much side spin we can actually apply to move our cue ball up and down the table. But there is one more example of a shot that I want to show you because this time we're going to use inside spin as opposed to outside spin or left spin that I had on this shot. Now at this end of the table, I'm going to try to shoot the 7 ball into the corner pocket and get position for this 9. Now, hopefully you'll be able to see that since I'll be cutting this 7 ball to my right, the cue ball is going to want to go off to the left. And I don't want to try to use outside spin or left spin in this case to try to flare my cue ball around 3 to 5 rails just to get position on the 9 ball, even though that's the most natural. Instead, I'm going to want to try to use inside spin or right spin in this case because I'm cutting the ball to my right. So that way I can try to shorten the outbound angle off of this first rail in order to minimize my cue ball movement. But before I do all of that, let me go ahead and just shoot this 7-ball in with a center cue ball hit. I'm going to try to hit this rather softly just so we can see what type of natural position I might have on the 9. Now that's actually not bad. I can still make the 9-ball from there. But with this second cue ball and 8-ball, let's play the same exact shot, except for I'm going to apply 2 tips of right spin. So that way, when I shorten the outbound angle off of this first rail, I'm also going to be slowing the cue ball down because I'm trying to get it to spin in the opposite direction from which it wants to go to. And therefore, my cut angle I should have on the 9 won't be as steep as the previous shot. And there you have it. Both shots are makeable, but hopefully you can see how trying to shorten the outbound angle off of the first rail with inside spin helps make the 9-ball shot a little bit easier. And that's going to do it for today's video. Now, I must confess how out of practice I actually feel at doing this, but I'm really happy to be back at it again. And hopefully with what I showed you today, using the tip of your cue as a visual guide, regardless of its diameter size, you'll be able to know exactly how much side spin you're applying on the cue ball. So if this is going to be the first time that you're ever going to be trying to apply side spin on your cue ball, then I would highly recommend that you don't go any more than just a half tip of side spin. And then as you get better, you'll know exactly how to apply more side spin a half tip at a time. So I hope everybody was able to find this video helpful, because if you did, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and then please ring that notification bell to get notified anytime I go live or publish a new video. Take care, everybody.